Power isn't built by adding more. It's built by removing what weakens you. The world tells you to network, to expand, to be liked. But Machiavelli would tell you the opposite truth. You're not judged by who you welcome in. You're judged by who you refuse to tolerate. A kingdom doesn't collapse because it lacks allies. It collapses because it let in the wrong ones, the flatterers, the cowards, the gossips, the betrayers. Yet this is exactly what most people do. They collect people like trophies. They hold on to friends out of guilt or fear. They avoid confrontation in the name of peace. And in doing so, they drown themselves in dead weight. This is the first law of pruning. Not everyone deserves to stand beside you. And the faster you cut the unworthy, the sharper your influence becomes. Machiavelli didn't waste time tolerating weakness. He watched silently, noted the signs, and when it was clear, he cut them cleanly, like a weed pulled from the root. You must learn to do the same, because keeping the wrong people is not kindness, it's negligence. The first type you must recognize is the flatterer. They look like supporters. They nod at every word. They agree with every plan. They mirror your tone, your confidence, your ideas. But look closer and you'll see emptiness behind their eyes. Their agreement is not loyalty, it's camouflage. Machiavelli warned that he who flatters without spine will betray without warning. These people don't agree because they believe. They agree because it's safe, because it keeps them close to your power, your decisions, your outcomes, but never your struggles. And when struggle arrives, they're the first to step back, the first to say, I never really agreed. I was just supporting you. That's not support. That's survival. Cut them early. Keep only those who dare to say no, but still stand beside you. Those who disagree but remain loyal. Because loyalty without truth isn't loyalty at all, it's theater. Then there are the inconsistent ones. Motivated today, destroyed tomorrow. Loyal in private, distant in public. With them, you are no longer leading, you are babysitting. Their pain becomes your burden. Their collapse becomes your cage. And slowly your energy drains, not because they fight you, but because they need you to carry them. Here's the brutal truth: you don't build power with the broken. Therapists heal the wounded. Priests tend to the guilty. But you build with those who can stand on their own. And finally, beware of those who talk too much. Not out of excitement, but as cover. They explain every action, justify every failure, excuse every delay. They smother you with words because they're afraid of judgment. But Machiavelli understood the one who explains too much has already calculated your doubt. He's preempting you, drowning your clarity in noise. Real players don't explain. They act. They win or lose and let silence tell the story. The rest they talk because outcomes alone would expose them. Power demands pruning. Just as a tree grows stronger when dead branches are cut away, your influence grows sharper when you remove the wrong people. But most refuse to cut. They cling. They confuse history for loyalty. They say we've known each other for years as if time itself is proof of value. Machiavelli would sneer at this weakness. Years mean nothing if those years were filled with mediocrity. The second law of pruning is this: test, don't trust. Too many people hand out trust like a gift, but trust is not given, it's proven. And the test is always pressure. Anyone can smile when the room is warm and safe. Watch them when the fire comes. That's where their true nature appears. Pressure reveals the coward. He makes excuses, shifts blame, disappears when needed most. Pressure reveals the opportunist. She clings when you rise, then vanishes when you stumble. Pressure reveals the envious. They cheer in public but celebrate privately when you falter. And pressure reveals the loyal, the rare one who stays even when staying costs them. That's the only ally worth keeping. But here's the trap: most men ignore what pressure shows them. They forgive. They rationalize. They say he didn't mean it. She was just scared. And in doing so, they invite weakness back into the circle. Machiavelli would warn of betrayal. Once excused is a betrayal guaranteed to return. The first cut is mercy. The second cut is stupidity. So how do you apply this? You create small storms. You test people deliberately. You add tension, observe, and take notes. Who panics? Who hides? Who speaks truth to your face instead of behind your back? Who acts the same in calm and in chaos? The storm doesn't create their character, it reveals it. And once revealed, you decide. Keep or cut. There's another category Machiavelli despised: the indecisive. The ones who hesitate endlessly, who weigh every option but never act. They love to analyze but never execute. These people infect you with their hesitation. They waste time with endless what-ifs while opportunities vanish. They appear intelligent, but indecision is just fear in disguise. And fear spreads. You don't need the smartest minds if they cannot act. You don't need the bravest hearts if they cannot decide. Power is built with those who move. Even a flawed decision is better than no decision because at least it creates momentum. The indecisive kill momentum. They poison strategy. They create paralysis where clarity should live. Machiavelli's advice is sharp: surround yourself with few but strong, not many but loyal, not agreeable but truthful, not perfect but decisive. The pruning is endless because weakness always tries to sneak back in. But every cut sharpens the circle, and every cut strengthens the throne. There's a brutal truth about power that few admit: most of your enemies won't come from outside. They'll come from inside your circle: the servant who knows your habits, the friend who knows your secrets, the partner who knows your weaknesses. Outsiders can only guess where to strike, but insiders already hold the map. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers to fear not the loud enemies, but the smiling ones at their table. The third law of pruning is vigilance. You must not only cut the weak, you must also guard against the ambitious who hide their claws. These are not flatterers, nor cowards, nor indecisive fools. These are predators in waiting. They act humble, patient, supportive. They play the role of servants so perfectly that you almost forget servants often dream of being kings. Signs are always there if you watch carefully. The ambitious insider is the one who studies your moves a little too closely, copies your mannerisms, mimics your tone, laughs at your jokes while secretly trying to deliver their own. At first it looks like admiration, but Machiavelli would whisper, imitation is the first rehearsal of betrayal. When they gather followers in quiet, when they create alliances in your shadow, when they test their voice in your absence, these are the sparks of rebellion. Ignore them and you'll find yourself surrounded not by allies, but by competitors who grew fat on your kindness. So what's the solution? You don't confront directly. That only teaches them to hide better. You test, you feed them pieces of false information and watch where it lands. You create controlled conflicts to see who they side with. You rotate responsibilities to see if they crave power or if they serve without question. The mask always slips when tested. And when it does, you cut cleanly. No warning, no hesitation. Machiavelli insisted that mercy and pruning is cruelty to yourself. The longer you keep a snake in your bed, the deeper it learns your warmth. And once it bites, it's too late. But here's the paradox: not every ambitious person is a threat. Some ambition can be harnessed. The one who craves influence but is loyal to your vision can be a weapon if directed. The danger is in those whose ambition exceeds their loyalty. That balance must be measured constantly. When loyalty wanes, pruning is not optional, it is survival. This vigilance must extend beyond individuals. Groups, alliances, even entire teams can rot from within. A single weak link tolerated too long poisons the whole. Machiavelli would remind you it's better to be feared by the few who remain than loved by the many who weaken you. Because love is fragile, but fear and respect endure. So prune endlessly, watch endlessly, cut when you must. Power is not about how many stand beside you, it's about how few you can trust without looking over your shoulder. The fourth law of pruning is emotional detachment. Most people fail to cut because their heart interferes. They confuse affection with value history, with loyalty, charm with strength. But Machiavelli would remind you power has no sentiment. A rotten branch doesn't heal because you love the tree. A snake doesn't lose its venom because you raised it since birth. To hesitate is to invite ruin. This doesn't mean cruelty, it means clarity. The moment you identify weakness, betrayal, or dead weight, you act. Quickly, decisively. Because hesitation is the soil where corruption spreads. The longer you delay, the more excuses you invent. You start saying, maybe he'll change. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe I'm being too harsh. And by the time you see the truth, the infection has already consumed half your circle. Machiavelli taught that rulers must learn to be feared more than they are loved. Not because fear is pleasant, but because fear keeps order. When people know you will cut without hesitation, they behave differently. They respect the boundaries. They weigh their actions. They think twice before testing you. Mercy invites repeat offenses. Detachment prevents them. But detachment must also be internal. You can not only prune people, you must prune your own impulses. Your desire to be liked, your need to be understood, your hunger for constant affirmation. These are weaknesses, and if left unchecked, they lead you to tolerate weakness in others. To prune your circle, you must first prune yourself. This self-pruning is brutal. It means silencing the voice that begs for comfort. It means cutting the habits that soften you. It means refusing to indulge in distractions that waste your focus. Every hour you spend chasing approval is an hour you could spend building authority. Every indulgence in comfort makes you less willing to enforce discipline on others. Look at history. Empires didn't fall because enemies were too strong. They fell because rulers grew soft. They tolerated weakness in themselves, then tolerated weakness in their courts until the whole structure collapsed. Internal decay always comes before external defeat. So the practice is this: detach from comfort, detach from excuses, detach from the illusion that loyalty can be bought with kindness. Then extend that discipline outward. Remove the flatterer, cut the coward, silence the gossip, isolate the inconsistent. And when ambition crosses loyalty, eliminate it before it spreads. The pruning will hurt. You will feel the sting of loneliness. But loneliness is lighter than betrayal. Solitude is sharper than chaos. And the weight of carrying weak men is far heavier than the weight of standing alone. Machiavelli would tell you better to be alone and strong than surrounded and vulnerable. A small circle of steel is worth more than an army of glass. And the only way to forge steel is through the fire of detachment. The fifth law of pruning is silence. Most people ruin their own cuts by over-explaining. They justify, they apologize, they soften the blow. But Machiavelli would shake his head. Explanation gives closure, and closure gives freedom. When you explain why someone is cut off, you free them from your shadow. They move on, they rebuild, they forget you. But when you cut in silence, they remain haunted. Silence is sharper than words. It denies closure. It denies certainty. It leaves them circling the absence, replaying the moment, wondering what they did wrong. This is the true power of pruning, not just removing someone, but removing them in such a way that your presence lingers. You don't curse them. You don't defend yourself. You don't even announce a separation. You simply vanish. And the silence echoes louder than any speech. Think about it. When a ruler publicly condemns a traitor, the traitor dies but becomes a story, a martyr even. But when someone simply disappears from court, no announcement, no explanation, the whispers never end. Did they betray? Were they plotting? Did they fall out of favor? The mystery becomes the punishment. The silence becomes the legend. You can use this same method in your own pruning. Not every separation requires noise. In fact, the more powerful you are, the less you should explain. Silence itself communicates strength. It says, I don't owe you reasons. I don't owe you closure. My decision is final. And silence protects you too. Every word you speak in explanation becomes a tool others can twist against you. Justify yourself once, and you'll be forced to justify again. But when you remain silent, there's nothing to attack, nothing to debate, nothing to defend. Your silence becomes the final word. Machiavelli understood that mystery multiplies fear. When people can't read you, they respect you more. When they can't predict you, they move carefully. When they can't understand your choices, they imagine them as larger, darker, more strategic than they really are. Your silence turns you into a phantom, half feared, half admired, but never ignored. So when you prune quietly. No speeches, no explanations, no long goodbyes. Let them feel the weight of the absence. Let them wonder forever if they were the problem, if they could have done something differently. Because in their endless speculation, you remain. And that is the hidden law. True pruning doesn't just cut people out of your life. It carves you deeper into theirs. The sixth law of pruning is consistency. One decisive cut makes a statement, but many inconsistent cuts make you look chaotic, impulsive, even weak. Power requires rhythm. When people watch you long enough, they must see a pattern, one that warns them. Disloyalty here has consequences. Weakness here has no place. Betrayal here is death. Machiavelli knew that disorder in punishment invites disorder in loyalty. If sometimes you cut sharply, but other times you excuse, forgive, or overlook, you teach people that boundaries are negotiable. And once your boundaries are negotiable, they will be tested endlessly. But when you cut consistently, you teach a different lesson. Weakness is never tolerated. Betrayal is never forgiven. Indecision is never allowed. That consistency builds a culture of discipline around you. Think of the general who punishes a deserter once but spares the next one. His army learns not fear but doubt. They wonder if the rules matter. They gamble with loyalty. But the general who enforces discipline every single time builds an army where desertion is unthinkable. Consistency sharpens fear into respect. In your own life, this means you cannot prune only when it's convenient. You must prune whenever the signs appear, no matter who it is, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. A friend of 10 years, a business partner, even family, if they weaken the circle, they must go. Because the moment you make an exception, everyone around you senses it. And once they sense it, the infection spreads. But consistency doesn't mean cruelty. It doesn't mean you cut recklessly at every flaw. It means you act with the same sharp standard every time. The same way a blade cuts no matter whose skin it touches, your discipline must cut no matter whose weakness it exposes. This fairness, though brutal, becomes respected. People know where you stand. They know the cost of failure. And ironically, this consistency makes your world calmer, not harsher. Machiavelli would argue chaos breeds from rulers who hesitate. Order comes from rulers who act the same every time without apology. The consistency itself becomes law, and law is stronger than fear alone, because fear fades. But law once set becomes unshakable. So ask yourself, do people see you as unpredictable, or do they see you as inevitable? Do they gamble with your patience, or do they know the outcome before they even test it? The answer lies in your consistency. Pruning once makes you powerful for a moment. Pruning consistently makes you untouchable forever. The seventh law of pruning is precision. Cutting the wrong people isn't enough. You must cut at the right time in the right way. Too soon and you look rash. Too late and the infection spreads. Machiavelli understood that timing is the hidden edge of power. A clean cut at the perfect moment sends a message louder than any speech. Most people either hesitate or explode. They wait too long, letting weakness fester, then finally lash out in anger. But by then it's messy. The circle is already poisoned. Others lose respect because they saw you tolerate the problem for too long. Or worse, they think your outburst is personal, not strategic. Precision means watching carefully, noting patterns, and striking the moment disloyalty crosses the line into danger. Not before, not after. Think of the ruler who punishes betrayal not when rumors start, but the moment evidence is undeniable. That timing teaches two lessons at once. Betrayal is always noticed and punishment is always certain. The delay makes the cut appear calculated, not emotional. That appearance of control is what builds fear and respect at the same time. The same applies to your personal world. You don't cut someone because of a single mistake. You cut when the mistake becomes a pattern. You don't prune every disagreement. You prune when disagreement masks disloyalty. You don't remove someone for being weak once. You remove them when their weakness becomes contagious. Precision isn't about cruelty, it's about clarity. And the method of the cut matters too. Sometimes silence is enough, simply withdrawing and letting absence deliver the message. Other times you must make the cut visible so others learn from it. Machiavelli would say, let punishment be rare, but when it comes, let it be unforgettable. Invisibility preserves mystery. Visibility preserves order. Both are weapons chosen depending on what serves you best. Precision also means self-control. If you cut in anger, the axe serves your emotions, not your strategy. But if you cut in silence, with patience, with timing, the axe serves your throne. The world doesn't fear a man who lashes out. It fears the man who could lash out but waits until the strike is cold, clean, and beyond debate. So remember, this pruning isn't just about removal. It's about mastery of timing and method. A sloppy cut is noise. A precise cut is power. The eighth law of pruning is renewal. Cutting is not just about removing, it's about creating space for strength to grow. Most rulers, most leaders, even most ordinary people make the mistake of pruning without replacing. They cut but leave the circle hollow. And a hollow circle doesn't stay empty for long. It fills with whispers, resentment, and eventually enemies. Machiavelli would warn nature hates a vacuum. If you remove without renewing, the absence becomes chaos. But if you remove and then cultivate, the absence becomes order. After every cut, ask yourself, what kind of person must take this place? Because every empty seat is a future throne for someone better, you choose who sits on it, then let it be seized by chance. Renewal doesn't mean rushing to replace. It means being deliberate. Just as a gardener doesn't throw seeds wildly into soil, you don't invite people blindly into your circle. You look for strength, loyalty, decisiveness. You test before you trust. You observe before you embrace. Renewal is about raising the standard higher after every cut, ensuring the circle grows sharper, not softer. Think of a general who loses soldiers in battle. The weak are gone, but he doesn't rush to fill the ranks with anyone willing to hold a sword. He chooses men hardened by trial, men who've proven themselves under pressure. Every replacement strengthens the army, not dilutes it. That is how power sustains itself, by constant pruning and intentional renewal. In your own life, this means you don't just cut toxic people, you attract disciplined ones. You don't just leave broken alliances, you build sharper ones. You don't just silence the coward, you promote the loyal who remained. Renewal is recognition. It rewards strength, and by rewarding it, you multiply it. But here's the hidden danger: if you only prune and never renew, you become isolated. And isolation, while useful at times, becomes vulnerability if stretched too long. Even Machiavelli admitted that power is never built alone. It is built with the right few, sharpened by fire, tested by storms. The wrong people destroy you. The right ones extend you. So the law of renewal is balance. Prune often. Replace wisely. Never tolerate weakness, but never allow emptiness to linger. A throne surrounded by ghosts will always fall. A throne surrounded by steel will endure. Power is not a static state. It breathes. It evolves. It demands both subtraction and addition, both cutting and cultivating. Renewal ensures that every cut becomes creation, every loss becomes leverage, and every silence becomes the soil for something stronger. The ninth law of pruning is isolation of rot. Weakness spreads faster than strength. One coward infects 10 men with hesitation. One gossip poisons the trust of a whole circle. One traitor, if tolerated, teaches others that betrayal is survivable. Machiavelli would remind you, a disease ignored does not heal, it multiplies. This is why pruning is not just personal, it is protective. You don't just cut to remove an individual, you cut to send a message. You isolate the rot before it contaminates the whole. A ruler who fails to do this doesn't lose power in a single blow. He loses it slowly, drip by drip, as his circle corrodes from within. Think of the army that allows one deserter to live. Soon others question why they should die for a cause the deserter walked away from freely. Think of the business that tolerates one incompetent leader. Soon mediocrity becomes a standard. Think of the relationship where one betrayal is forgiven without consequence. Soon respect evaporates. Every act tolerated sets a precedent, and precedent builds culture. The wise strategist acts before the infection spreads. He does not wait for collapse. He does not excuse the first sign of rot. He isolates, removes, and ensures everyone sees the cost. Machiavelli would call this not cruelty, but clarity. Mercy to the few is cruelty to the many, but cruelty to the few is mercy to the many. This law demands courage. Because cutting early often feels harsh, you'll be tempted to give second chances, to hope weakness will fix itself. But weakness rarely fixes itself. It hides, adapts, and waits, and when the moment comes, it strikes harder than before. Delay in pruning is permission to betray. Isolation of rot is also internal. Your habits, your thoughts, your impulses, if one is weak, it spreads. One excuse becomes many. One skipped discipline becomes a lifestyle. One indulgence becomes a chain. If you don't isolate your own rot, it consumes you from the inside. The throne outside will always reflect the throne inside. So the law is simple but ruthless. Cut the infection early. Make it visible. Let everyone know that weakness has no sanctuary in your world. In doing so, you don't just remove the rot, you vaccinate the circle. You build a culture where fear of betrayal outweighs the temptation of it, and where loyalty becomes the only path to survival. Pruning is not cruelty, it is medicine, but only if applied at the first sign of disease. The 10th and final law of pruning is endurance. Cutting once takes courage. Cutting consistently takes discipline. But pruning for a lifetime, that requires endurance. Because the truth is, this power is never permanent. People change. Loyalties shift. Even the strongest ally can weaken, and even the most trusted partner can drift. If you stop pruning even for a moment, rot will return. Machiavelli understood that rulers fall not because of one great enemy, but because of slow neglect. They grew tired of watching. They softened with age. They surrounded themselves with comfort, with flatterers, with those who fed their ego instead of their strategy. And little by little, their circle became their coffin. Power doesn't die in battle, it dies in silence when the pruning stops. Endurance means accepting that the work is never done. You will always be testing, always watching, always cutting, always renewing. It is not a season of life. It is the structure of life. Just as a garden must be trimmed every spring, your circle must be trimmed again and again. The moment you believe your throne is safe, it begins to weaken. But here's the paradox, though. Pruning is endless. It creates peace. The peace of knowing that everyone around you has been tested. The peace of knowing no coward sits beside you. No gossip whispers behind you. No traitor waits for the right moment. Endurance builds not paranoia, but clarity, because you no longer wonder you know. This is why the final law isn't about others. It's about you. Do you have the endurance to keep cutting when it's uncomfortable? Do you have the discipline to prune even when you'd rather rest? Do you have the courage to accept that this vigilance never ends? If you do, then your circle will sharpen over time until it is unbreakable. Few in number, heavy in loyalty, fierce in strength. The kind of circle that doesn't just protect power, it multiplies it. The kind of circle that outlasts storm's enemies and time itself. Machiavelli would tell you pruning is not about cruelty, it is about survival. And survival repeated long enough becomes legacy. So cut when you must, replace when you must, test always, watch always, and never grow tired of the blade. Because the moment you do, the weeds return, and everything you've built begins to fall. Endurance is the crown, and those who wear it understand true power is not what you gain. It's what you're willing to cut away again and again until only strength remains.